Welcome to the Security Today podcast. I'm your host, Uncle Baer, and this is a podcast that is brought to you by Sprinter Business Solutions. You can check them out at sprinterit.com, and this episode is from our segment Bid2Bank. That's right. Every single time I get a chance to sit down with some small to medium business and big business entrepreneurs that are running their show, I want to bring them into the light of running from the bid to the bank, going over everything that they do, so that way you can take from it what you need in your business to succeed as well, and you can see another perspective. So today I am super excited, first of all, because it's the first Bid2Bank of 2024, which just feels right to have Brian on here. But I got Brian Akerley with me, and he'll introduce himself. But I've known Brian for quite a while. Actually, when I was running my own stuff, I saw him putting in these strange yellow cans, and I was like, man, can I call you and ask you about whatever that access control you're putting in is? And he answered and introduced me to PDK, which is something that if you listen to this podcast, you know that I'm a big supporter of Pro Data Key. And Brian, this gentleman right here, is the one who introduced Baer to it. So that's quite the trophy in and of itself right there. But we'll get into it. Brian, thank you so much for joining and giving your time today to get on the podcast. Go ahead and just introduce yourself and your company and give us a little background on maybe how you got into security and what you're running now. And then we'll start on some questions to move from the bid to the bank.
Awesome. Well, Baer, as always, really appreciate being here. This is, I feel like I finally made it.
Yeah.
So, been listening to a few of the other guys, Will over at Stice, and then Dan with Locks Plus, both kind of in the same realm I am. So, hearing
Awesome.
them and reaching out to you. So, it's I'm glad to be here. So, first off, thank you. My name's Brian Akerley with A&B Lock and Security. We're out of New Hampshire and southern Maine. Been in business since 1987. My father started the company. I'm fourth generation locksmith, and we have, over the last 15 years, turned from a traditional locksmith provider to full low voltage integrator. Access, cameras, Berg, data, fiber, in addition to a lot of doors, frames, handicap operators, and kind of some basic consulting and integration design services, kind of tying all the industries together for our customers. I started, kind of grew up in the industry, working with my father next to him down in our basement shop in our house. My grandmother's family was actually the locksmith outside of Boston, and my great-grandfather was the locksmith for the Transit Authority before it became what it is in Metro Boston, working out of the trunk of his car, doing all the subways and rail stations.
Wow.
So, long locksmith history, and just kind of have grown since that to where we are now, kind of the full-fledged all-in-one.
That is amazing. I would love to hear stories about that sometime. Just, the locksmith trade in and of itself, and you know this, that's where I started as well. First 3 or 4 years I was running as a locksmith, and I just feel like it has such a close, it's so close to my heart, that trade. It's just a beautiful trade. It's understanding it. I can't speak more highly of it. So I knew getting you on here was going to have to be a must. I love having locksmiths on here. And the locksmiths that can work in that environment and then shift it to, like you said, that low voltage, all the way to fiber, man, that's rare. And it's quite the accomplishment. And it's definitely the type of people that I want to be in the same room as, just because that's that forward thinking that can really drive you to get fulfillment out of your career. So that's awesome to hear. So how many guys are you running at A&B? Is it just still you and your father?
No. So my father, we have kind of two locations. One, our original central New Hampshire, and then mine is in the Seacoast, New Hampshire, and we cover southern Maine. We currently have 9 technicians in the field. A couple come out of him. Most of them come out of my office. We handle all kind of the low voltage integration. So we're a lot more of a traveler than he is. And then we have an office staff of two, one administration and one in-shop locksmith, which is a new position, which is a first for us. So it's exciting. This young person actually reached out to us
Oh
looking to
yeah.
learn a trade. They live around the corner. They walk to work. They're loving life, and I'm really glad I can show him something that I've learned my whole life.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
That's always excellent to hear because getting young people into the trades, let alone just into low voltage alone, is kind of difficult. And finding those people who want to learn it. So what can you just highlight for just a second before we get into these questions, moving from locksmithing all the way to fiber? I feel like that is a jump that just needs a little bit of a highlight here at the beginning, because that's big. That's looking forward and looking ahead. So can you just kind of walk me through how that happened, or your thought process on it, or did you fall into it, or how'd that go?
Um, yeah. So being a family-owned business, my father and I being the primary, my mother always ran the books. Uh, One of the biggest things was we would have customers ask us, "Hey, I'm looking for a door buzzer, electric strike with a switch under the desk." And I would say, "Hey," and to my father, I call him Bill. It's kind of that business relationship. So I'm not really a
Yeah.
dad type of guy. It's been like that since I was 10. So I said, "Hey Bill, can we put this under, do this?" No, that's what a security company does. As a 16, 17-year-old persistent kid,
Yeah.
I always knew what was right, I guess. So I would take that job on, and then that would go well. Hey, we want a keypad. Yep, I'll learn how to do that. We want an intercom and a keypad, and then it turned into a few doors. Then we want access control that's software based, and that has spiraled to what it was. So it was more or less me pushing my father to places he never wanted to go, and me being a smart ass 17-year-old kid, um, you know, knowing better, I guess, as he would say. And obviously, it's turned into a lot bigger systems, a lot more networking, infrastructure, and learning and dealing with good relationships, especially on the social media markets along the way, to learn what I've learned with no real professional training.
Mm, yeah. That's excellent takeaway. I feel like for other people out there that are wanting to go either way on that ladder, getting into doors and frames and locksmithing, I mean, it's a big lift, but it's a big lift either way. And
Of
I
course.
think that it's really important because so many people are just slapping hardware up there and they don't really know where maybe there's problems that lie in the customer's future because they can't assess a healthy door from a non-healthy door. And so it's definitely something to pursue and to look after. So I'm glad that you have that, and I'm glad that we could get into it. So let's get into the questions from Bid2Bank, and just start right off. I usually start with the marketing and sales, which is kind of ahead of the bank. So I guess the podcast should be called Marketing to Bank. But I do want to kind of get a feel for how you guys market. So what's like a product that you sell a lot of when it comes to A&B, and then how do you position your company marketing wise in a way that causes that product to be sold more and more?
Yeah, so I'm going to exempt the kind of locksmith side of it, as most traditional locksmith work is handled locally. So that's really our bread and butter. Our local markets are locksmithing. I'll speak to mostly the low voltage, but obviously it integrates a lot.
Yeah.
On the low voltage side is access control. Um, Specifically, shout out to Pro Data Key. We're a platinum partner with PDK. We've been running them for 4 or 5 years. Kind of fell into it. A customer had bought it from their fire alarm provider. They had no idea how to install it. I said, "Hey, I saw it in a catalog. Let me give it a try." Fell in love. So many new innovations with it. So pushing that as our primary platform, cloud-based access. We also sell some in Phineas and then Phoenix on the Mercury platform.
Mm-hmm.
But really being an all-in-one provider that we can kind of come in and push the access and the mechanical security. They're hand in hand. If you don't have, even if you sub it out, if you don't have a strong locksmith in your pocket, it's going to be a really tough world to put access control in. So a lot of our marketing is direct. We know who our businesses that do well, municipalities, commercial property management, a lot of K through 12 education. So with that aside, we know exactly who we're targeting, marketing. We don't do a lot of online. We have a lot of trucks that have very expensive full wraps on them. We get comments every day. Wow, how many of you guys are out there? We're seeing you everywhere. So we got rolling billboards, a lot of direct marketing. If we see projects coming up, we might throw an email out there. But besides that, a lot of referrals. Good business makes good business.
Yeah. That's a nugget right there. Good business makes good business. Yeah. That falls in line with everything I've been hearing from other guys who are rocking it in interviews, and kind of the mentality of the podcast is being that better tech and good business makes good business. So once you and I want to highlight that you do have really good wrapped trucks. They're beautiful. You display them in your ads. You display them on your social media, on Instagram at, is it NH? Is it A&B Lock NH?
A&B Lock NH. Yep.
Okay, yeah, A&B Lock NH on Instagram. So give that a follow. But yeah, you put them in your content, and you're right. Those are rolling billboards. I think that a lot of times that initial maybe hump of paying for a really good wrap is probably a little bit of a deterrent to penny pincher business owners who, don't want to just throw money out the door. But those things are seen across town. And if you see it once or twice a month in your mind, you're like, dang, these guys are everywhere, And so that's pretty critical. I think pretty crucial to a marketing strategy is making sure that you have almost like that's your brand, that's your stamp. And they can see you in Maine, they can see you in New Hampshire, they can see you down in Connecticut, and be like, oh my gosh, these guys look 10 times bigger than they are. And you can look that way and then provide the quality of a small focused shop, and you're killing it. So when it comes to bidding, once you get that job and they see that truck and they're like, we need something from them, they give you a call. And then are you using software to quote? I know that sometimes from lock shops, you'll get guys still writing hand paper, invoices, but are you using something to do that?
Yeah, we're using Service Fusion. We've been using Service Fusion for 3-4 years. We are always QuickBooks as a back end. We were using QuickBooks Desktop. Got rid of that 2 years ago to QuickBooks Online, but Service Fusion as the management platform in front of QuickBooks Online. It does everything we need. They do a lot of locksmith security, and HVAC is kind of seems like their niche.
Mm-hmm.
The mobile app is great. We looked at a few others. The biggest advantage I found was having generally low cost monthly subscription. You weren't paying per device, a phone, a tablet, and a laptop per employee. It would get very, very expensive. So the price point, the features, they're rolling out a lot of new stuff. But Service Fusion is our primary invoicing and estimating platform.
And when you invoice or when you estimate, do you usually, what's that process look like when the client calls you? Do you usually do an on-site visit, or are you just getting like a virtual call, or just filling it out and maybe getting prints off them? How's that usually look?
Yeah, so I like to start my process in a couple different ways. I guess depending if it's an existing customer, a new customer, or maybe we don't do a lot of bid work. We don't follow the bid circle around. We're kind of our own entity. But I like to have a phone call. My office will send me an email or phone call, say, hey, customer X is looking for access and cameras. Perfect. Give them a call. Hey, what are you guys looking for? How many doors? Um, let's see if they know how many doors they're looking for.
Mm.
Also ask them, I think one of the biggest features is what are they looking to get out of the project? Are they looking for perimeter security? Are they looking for interior, general coverage, focus coverage? So I'm going to gauge them off a simple phone call and then see if I can get some plans, drawings before I get out to the site or have them ready. We don't charge for walkthroughs or to build the estimate. My advantage with the hardware side of things, I've been doing this my whole life. I can spit out hardware numbers. I'm not looking up part numbers really at all. So I can very much mechanically kind of simplify this process.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll go out to the customer, do the walkthrough, the key points. What type of ceilings? Are we piping it? Do we have to use some raceway? Are we snaking walls? Do we have to put J hooks everywhere? Do you have, hooks above the ceiling, plenum, non-plenum, and I've built this over years of doing this I think we all have one project that they forgot to tell us that it was a plenum space above the ceiling, and, you got to pull out 185 drops in a weekend and have fun at the scrapyard. But you learn to ask those questions during the walkthrough. That will also kind of let the customer know what's going on. One major thing I've always asked now, and I have for a few years, is am I the first walkthrough? Right? Almost everybody now is attempting at least to get 3 bids or more.
Yeah.
Am I the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth? Because if I'm the first, I'm going to point out things that other companies I know are going to miss on the hardware side. I do that as my due diligence to explain to them, you got a door that doesn't latch, we're going to need a Roton hinge, and you need a new threshold. So they can do all they want with hardware. It's not going to work right until you get this fixed. So giving the education to the customer, I think, is huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Elaborate a little bit on the door health there of what you just said, because I think a lot of the listeners that I know listen to the podcast might not be in door hardware or door frames or anything like that. So you just said things that I know what you said, but I want to make sure that everybody's tracking, because one thing that Roger Schmidt, who we had on the podcast, actually taught me from Asa Abloy was door health. And it's so critical to a system and to the functioning of that system. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Absolutely. I love that word, door health. So all my guys, especially the locksmiths, have kind of a door check sheet. Doesn't matter if they're going out to just do a single door rekey or if they're doing a bigger hardware install. We're going to look at these, but I think it's 8 bullet points. Look at the door, frame, and hinges, right? Take a look at the door, open the door to 45 degrees open, give it a push from the latch side of the door. Are the hinges loose? You'll feel immediately if the hinges are loose. That top hinge will bounce. Could be a simple correction with a impact gun or a handheld impact. Note it. Does the frame, we were just on a job yesterday, the frames are about to fall out of this wall. It was a knockdown frame. Right? If you do it, fix it. If you don't do it, have the customer find a contractor or a door company to fix it. It's really hard to put door operators and mag locks and whatever else on a frame that's going to constantly shift every time the door shuts. Mm-hmm. So the frame tight, obviously being up in the Northeast, we, thankfully for salt, we have a reoccurring revenue of rotted out door frames. So winters and rock salt keeps us afloat on our door side until they come out with aluminum. Even on the aluminum side, you'll find the deterioration. But are the frames rotted? Do they shut well? Are the doors bound? Frames loose? That basics. Now work to the hardware. Does the door have a door closer? Is it working? Is it leaking? You don't want to sell somebody a multi-$1,000 access control system on a door with no door closer for somebody to leave it swinging in the breeze. What's the hardware look like? Is it storeroom function? Is it locked all the time? That's the functionality. We see it all the time. Are we going to cut in a strike? Awesome. If we're going to cut in a strike, we always pair it with a latch protector plate. As you know, an electric strike leaves such an opening to be, jimmied or opened with a screwdriver, whatever you want to call it, always hand in hand. The last, same thing. You sell them a $3,000 access control door, and I can get into it with a popsicle stick. I don't want to field that phone call.
Yeah.
So little things like that. Good photos. Take photos. Photos are zero cost. Take videos and narrate through it. When I get a complicated door, I'm taking a video, as silly as it is, and I'm pointing and I'm explaining. Because when I look at a photo of my finger pointed at the middle hinge, and I don't remember why I was pointing to it, and then on site I remember there's an electrical outlet on the other side, and I can't put my reader there, or whatever it may be, take a video, walk yourself through the door. Same thing, and just really basic hardware. Is the door dragging? You got to make sure that door health and the hardware health is at least able to latch and secure every time. It's going to be hard to put access control on a door that doesn't mechanically fit. So I can't stress that enough. Obviously, my background is hardware, so I might be a little overzealous with it, but
No, I don't think so at all. I think you're just zealous enough to get people starting to pay attention that they need to be looking at that stuff. So when you get out to the job and you're looking at all these things, and maybe it looks like you're going to have to snake a bunch of wires, or some frames are going to be difficult, or it's all open air and you're going to get out of there quick. Does that move your markup or your margin on the project, or so that every project is kind of its custom environment? Or do you have some flat rates that this is just what we do, and I know that covers me in worst case scenarios?
So flat rates, we are starting to use a little bit more, especially on the cable drop, network drop, or cameras, interior cameras. We start putting pipe, drilling walls, and doing fire seals, all that side of it. The price goes up. The way I traditionally kind of build, say, a camera system, I'm going to include the equipment. If there's 10 cameras, I'm going to add it. I'm going to do 11 drops. 10 network drops for the cameras, one for the network feed. I never want to forget that network feed and check where the router's coming from. You might eat that one. So always add an 11th or an extra for the feed.
Yeah.
From there, lost my train of thought. From there, I'm going to add in labor, right? We still have to program the camera. We still have to mount the camera. We still have to put the J box, the base bracket, put a short piece of, EMT on the wall to get it from the ceiling down. Somebody has to, the drop cost is to get the wire from the switch or the rack to above the camera. The labor is now covering from the camera to that drop point. Programming, training is in the labor. So they balance each other out. I think that's the way I do it, and it seems to work really well.
Do you massage quotes sometimes to get them, or are you kind of like, I got enough work that it is what it is and I'll move on if not?
I would say the value we're bringing is we're handling everything mechanical and electrical. We absolutely have an advantage over most of our competition because nobody's fixing a roton, pulling the cable, and doing the networking.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a second provider in there at some point. Excuse me. So I think the value we bring reflects in our pricing, but I'm also very being that small company feel, and I'm very personable with my customers. That I can look somebody in the eye, and if somebody says you quoted out X, I will never I can explain down to the T what's involved in every process,
Mm-hmm.
generally how much time, and having very reliable professional employees costs something. I don't have, wire monkeys or, guys
Yeah.
just yanking cable for a living. Everyone is expected to do just about everything. So, right, we pay well, we get extremely high quality service. Um, so that comes with a price. But I would say we're still very fair in our pricing, and I never send something out going, you know, marking it up 4 times the price, going, I got them.
Yeah.
I still need to sleep at night.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Awesome. So if you win the bid and they go, okay, yeah, this looks great. What are the first 3 steps in starting that life cycle of that project after that bid has been accepted that A&B takes?
So I'd say the first, and these have changed over the last few years. We just hit our 1 year anniversary with our business consultant, who has been fantastic. Right, that helps a lot of these processes. Having somebody from the outside, the right person has to be the right person, looking at your business,
Mm-hmm.
not through a personally connected lens, which is really tough for most of us. But I throw that out as a side note. I'd recommend that for anyone feeling like they could do better or to streamline, look for the right person. But with that, once we get the estimate approved, we require a 50% deposit. Any jobs over 2,500, any jobs we use the threshold of 10,000. We do a full contract terms. We had our lawyer spin it up. Very basic boilerplate language. It's been reviewed before. It goes to their legal. If they're a big enough company, basically says we're going to start A, we're going to finish on Z, and it's going to include X and Y as the scope. And then change orders will be handled as such. Do we follow it all the time? The change order should be probably a little bit more of a rigid process.
Yeah.
We take for granted, but that's a work in progress on its own. But then we usually convert the estimate into a job. We create another job and turn it to an invoice for our 50% deposit, as most companies won't pay on a work order or a job. They got to pay on an invoice with an attached PO.
Mm-hmm.
So we make sure we have a purchase order, a signed agreement, a signed contract in hand before a lick of hardware gets ordered. We hear it all the time. We just had a school order 5 doors. They said, hey, just order them up. We'll be good. It's a substantial project, a lot of vertical rod hardware. It's a $60,000 to $70,000 project. And I said, how about I wait till a PO? He said, no, we're good. And I got a call on Monday saying, I hope you didn't order anything. They want to break it up into 2 different budget years. And I'm like, I didn't. I said, I have a good relationship with this guy. I said, I love you, but I'm not going to trust your word.
Yeah.
I need a PO coming from the business office. So, then if not, I'd be sitting on, $15,000 of Sargent hardware, tripping over it, laughing to myself. So keep processes in place, and they're there for a reason. I'm probably the one who skirts most of them. So I have to reel myself back in sometimes.
And so after you get that contract in hand, you order hardware. What does it look like
Mhm.
moving forward? Do you schedule out based on hardware, or do you schedule out based on the business schedule?
So a little bit of both. As you know, a lot of low voltage work is like the redheaded stepchild of the industry. Walls are
Yeah.
sheetrocked, first coat of paint's on, and then somebody says, "Oh, you know what? We probably should have did access control or cameras here. Perfect time to bring us in." Or sheetrockers are coming Wednesday. It's Thursday. Can you get this done in 4 days? So
Yeah.
constantly revolving schedule. We plan our projects out as best as possible. We've worked on a new Excel document that's broken up into a few different spreadsheets from access, cameras, basic low voltage, doors, frames, and locksmithing projects. It shows kind of our progression steps. Have we got the deposit? Has hardware been ordered? Once hardware is 100% in on our smaller projects, we will then schedule larger scale projects. As you know, we got to pre-wire in new construction.
Hmm.
You got to meet the rest of the building's needs. So staying in touch with general contractors or project managers or the owner's reps, even if it's just a text message or an email. Hey, where are they at on the fifth floor? Fifth floor is done. They're sheetrocking the fourth. They'll be on the first floor in a month. So I know we need to get cabling in a week or two. So new construction is a lot different than retro. So you need to consider the other trades, their schedule, their delays, and how things kind of match up. So
Is there any sort of what's your process, or do you use a software to make sure that you're checking in on the projects that are on the table?
yeah, so that Excel sheet has been really nice.
Mhm.
So pretty simple, 9 columns. I created some nice drop downs. Spent some time learning how to use Google Sheets a little bit more in depth, but using drop downs, color coding. So if somebody calls on a project in the office manager can actually just pull up the sheet and say, "Yep, deposit's been paid, hardware's on order, or the job's pre-wired. We're we're set to go back anytime." It kind of some customers are more need a little bit of hand holding more than others, and a lot of updates. So if you can have that information, stop with just a phone call into the office
Mhm.
versus trying to get all the way to me just to ask, hey, where we're at. It's a time savings on everybody's part.
Yeah, and that really kind of plays into the next question about customer experience. And I know firsthand as well that you'll get customers who they want to know every little thing that's going on, and then you get customers who forgot that you were on their job. So it's a wide variety and kind of a big girth of it. So how are what's like, I guess, talk to the listeners a little bit about maybe one thing that you feel is most important when it comes to that customer experience that you can use on a wide variety of customers.
Absolutely. And I'm a student of the process every day. By no means I have every answer, and I kind of disperse that down through my employees too. That I might not have the best answer, but one thing is communication. For me, between communication and delegation, my phone rings 60 to 90 times a day.
Mm.
Emails are through the roof. Texts, I have to delegate. And being in the office a lot more has really taught me that, because I can get to 2 of the 15 items that I needed to that day if I get sidetracked. So it's a learning curve. It's very difficult, but I have very capable staff. If I let the guys know, hey, can you follow up with this guy, see where they're at in the construction process? I can absolutely make that phone call, but I don't have to.
Mm.
They're the one on the job site. And when that GC says, "I'm glad you called. They're ahead of schedule. Can you get here next week?" They can make that call on the fly and say, "Yep, no problem. They'll talk to me and I'll work the schedule out."
Mm.
Communication between other trades, and especially with the customer, and if there's a contractor in the middle, if it's new work, but keeping people enlightened. And by no means I'm an expert. I've you know because my phone rings so often, I drop stuff. I'm not perfect, but it's how you pick it up and make it work in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I feel as if you're kind of hitting on two things there. First is definitely that customer experience of communication of where you're at in the process, and then it's also talking to the GC or the other trades. And I think that both oftentimes on this podcast I ask about the customer experience because I want guys to think about that. I feel as if the low voltage industry especially, um, I have seen a wide variety of business owners who are just bad at getting back, who quotes take weeks, and they were supposed to be out there, but they weren't that day, or they were supposed to order those parts and they didn't. So I like to highlight on this podcast that customer experience so that guys listening to this and girls listening to this can go, oh yeah, we need to make sure that we up that when we're dealing with our business. But you bring up a really good point that I think is also as valuable, and that is that relationship between trades or that relationship with the GC. Because oftentimes, if those communications are fluent and they're open and you're reaching out to them to tell you where you're at, or if you need something done by a sheetrocker, an electrician, or something, that can build relationships, strong relationships that can help you big time. I know I'm a little sidetracked here, but when I was working in Montana, we were putting in a lot of audio, video, and high end resi buildings that were new construction, and we had an excellent relationship with the electrical contractor that was pretty popular around there. And it was just one dude, and he was kind of sour, like he was well weathered from the sun and from the cigarettes, and so he was kind of hard to deal with if you were just some Joe Blow, or if you were just some other GC that didn't do that. But because we fostered that relationship, anytime we needed something moved on the house, or we needed, an extra outlet here or there, he was like, yeah, no problem. I'll get to it this day. And that can save you as many headaches as being on a good relationship with the customer too. Is that kind of what you found as well?
100%. Especially on new construction, right? When we're doing retrofit, if it's a door or access control, take a door for an example. We do a retrofit of the back door of a retail store or a school. I get to quote whatever I want, what type of frame, what type of hinges, how I want the hardware to look, the light kits, any of that. You get to new construction, now you have architects telling you this is what you need.
Yeah.
Part numbers that I have to call because they have so many specialty little niche pieces in them. I can't find them online for pricing.
Right.
That's not what we do. So one big thing I've found is talking to the other trades. I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not that good at. We don't do fire alarm. So if I need, fire, I tell them, hey, I need a relay module here. I send them a marked up photo. I understand the concepts. I know where it has to be, why it has to be that way. So I'll put it, so there's no thinking for them. I'm not some guy just saying I need something, I don't know what it is, and I don't know where I need it.
Mm-hmm.
I give them the roadmap. Having that conversation with the door hardware company, Maybe you have a hardware installer who's actually, it might not be the supplier. So talking to those crews, the handicap operator companies.
Hmm.
I know where I am in New Hampshire, there's 2 primaries who are ADAM certified. Myself, we're the third, plus one door company. So there's not many ADAM certified people. So we're always working with the same suppliers. And then maybe we're only doing the cameras, or we're only doing the access. So if there's a networking company or IT, talk to all of them. How do you want it? What color keystone? Where in the patch panel? What port? Get down to the nitty gritty, because when you come in blazing and you're asking the right questions, they're like, all right, you know, they might
Yeah.
say, I guess I'm a little bit older than I am when I was, in my early 20s, but I used to get like a young kid in the room, he doesn't know shit, we got to hold his hand. And I come in and I say, this is what I need and how I need it. How do you guys want it? And where do you need it? They're blown away. It's that professional respect between all contractors that really makes the project what it is.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. So once that happens and the project's getting wrapped up, you kind of touched on this, but what payment methods do you use to collect? So you get that 50% up front, and is that just invoiced through like is it ACH, like a bank account?
We are starting to use ACH a little bit more. A lot of checks,
Yeah.
mostly checks. A lot of credit cards. Obviously, with credit card fees, you got to. We're not super. We're very tolerant.
Yeah.
But if somebody's going to try to put a very large project on a credit card, we we don't allow that.
Yeah.
As much as I like to get quick payment, do you want check or credit card? Send a check. I can wait a few days versus paying 1,000+ in fees. So that's real money out of the company's pocket. So, but if we can expedite on a smaller project, get a deposit on a credit card. Service Fusion has a great email link. They can pay right on the link on the
Mhm.
email. It's done. Hardware is going to be ordered next day.
Do you find that do you find that customers are more apt to do that, like pay off of a digital invoice, if you will, rather than like sending a check in or sending them to a specific link or something like that?
Yeah, for smaller stuff and service calls, absolutely. Granted, we have the locksmith side of the house, so basically our rule of thumb, if it's a residential or a one-time commercial project, it's the gas station or it's the shoe store for a rekey,
Mm-hmm.
we're collecting payment before we leave. If it's a recurring customer, we're net 30. We're probably a lot more flexible than we should be, but it allows us to just move to the next job, as long as we kind of follow up on it. But excuse me, people really like paying electronically.
Yeah.
When we went to that service, I wasn't sure if people were going to use it a few years ago, and then I would used to get the payment receipts 11 o'clock at night, 1 in the morning, 4 a.m. on a Sunday.
Yeah.
People, we get it right during the day. Emails are coming out of our ears. That's everybody, I would say, in some line of work. So when they get home, they're relaxed. They had a beer, they're watching the football game, and they go, shoot, I forgot to pay the security guy, or my monthly monitoring's up, right? They pull out their credit card, they do it. So it's a huge convenience,
Mm.
and we've seen people love to do it.
Now, you talked about being a PDK Platinum partner, and so that's obviously RMR, working in the cloud and even security space, IT space. Low voltage is really functioning out of RMR right now. So is a lot of what you do RMR, even if it's higher end commercial or if it's like one-off jobs. Obviously more on the low volt side than the locksmith, but RMR, is that a huge factor to your company?
It has been, absolutely. The access control is I hate to say 9 out of 10 doors because it's probably closer to 49 out of 50 doors that we are putting premise or not non-premise based. Everything is cloud. It's what we lead with. We don't compare one versus the other. People recognize the value of cloud. You pull out your phone, it has every app or every capability that the tablet does. It looks just like the PC. I'm speaking Pro Data Key specifically, but I train on one platform. The difference is the icons are in a row on a phone or they're wide on a computer screen. That is huge. Saving truck rolls because of networking issues, same thing.
Yeah.
I don't have to go to sites and change IP addresses, or I'm changing networks or whatever. Once we get that internet feed, we're kind of good to go. So the RMR is huge, but it
Do
does
you
save the customer.
Yeah. Do you run that usually monthly or annually? Because I know that some guys change that up.
We do everything annually, and the only reason is it's easy.
Yeah.
Right, we're collecting everything at once. So I roll the first year into the estimate, and I think that's one thing to note. If we have a reoccurring revenue or a subscription-based service for that job, we are noting on our estimate first year of annual cloud fees or monitoring fees, whatever it may be, is included. Moving forward, it is billed annually. So at month 13 and they get a bill for X amount, they're not curious of why. Sometimes you got to remind them, especially new construction, because they might not have seen it as closely as a retrofit. But that we bill annually. As soon as I get my statement from Pro Data Key or Phoenix or whoever, I bill it out the next day, and it seems to get paid, really well. So, zero pushback. We only have one customer that pays monthly, and that's because they have a volume of 15 or 16 alarm sites. So,
Yeah.
it's easy to bill out 12 times a year.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, well, that's kind of from the bid to the bank. So I always want to ask, and I like sticking the humbling question in there. Obviously, you've shown that you are already a humble guy. But what is one thing that you feel like maybe A&B is soft on or could get better at if you had to point out one thing to focus on?
Absolutely. We all have plenty of things we can work on, but I would say right now with balancing growth is communication paths, keeping people updated, customers and staff. I couldn't stress that more. Sending emails out, in the morning, at night. Hey, this is the plan for the week. Hey, the plan changed. This is, you guys need X, Y, and Z. We have it. If not, grab it. Same thing with the customers. Even if it's just a simple email, and I still do to time, I'll sit on an email and be like, I got to call that guy. I got to call them. And then I'm like, and every now and then you get that person who's not happy be like, why didn't you call me? I'm like, should have called them. So take your own advice. Worst thing you do is send an email, make a phone call, just touch base, even if you don't have the answer. Communications is everything.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that is a silver lining from we're now at, I think this is like number 9 for Bid2Bank. This is like the 9th episode that I've had the pleasure of doing. And I've had some really high caliber people on this podcast. And that seems to be something that they all see as very valuable and very important, is that line of communication throughout the whole process to your customers. So I guess then the last question is the bonus question. And I would just love to hear from you based on your experience moving a job from bid to bank all the way through, where would you say that the focus is most critical in the completion of that job? And then also, do you have any takeaways for listeners in regards to that point or that focus?
It's the 10% of the job. It's that last 10%, right? We can go out, work weekends, work nights, and we pull the cable, we're before sheetrock. It's in the hooks. It's dressed up. It is awesome. That's great, but that's all really a static material until you plug it into the switch, or you light up the reader and you integrate the operator. We just closed out a big grow operation. It was more of a retail side of a grow operation. We spent all day. I was remote. I had one of my lead techs on the job site. We're on the phone back and forth, but we set up the VoIP phones, right? They're already there. They're in their offices. We're setting the PIN codes. Oh, they want the intercom on the DW Spectrum software. We had to troubleshoot the audio, the Pro Data Key integration with DW Spectrum. It's all those little punch list items. I know it all works, but sometimes you need the customer's input. You need them there. You need everything in place. So pulling cable and lining it up is sometimes mindless. It's that last 5 to 10% in looking a customer in the eyes going, are you happy? Are you satisfied 110%? Because I tell them when we sit down for the design, the other 50% of the job is at completion and 100% satisfaction. Excuse me. If they're not satisfied, in my mind, I don't want to put my sticker on the can. I want to get the service. I want to be their provider long term. I don't want to just get the job and see you later. I want to build that personal relationship. That's me. That's my father. That's our guys. That's what our business is. So it's huge, the satisfaction at versus completion.
Well, good business is good business. Yeah.
Yeah. I might have to trademark that.
Yeah. Exactly. That's great to hear, man. And yeah, I think that lines up with the excellence of your company and some of the other guys I've seen, their companies that are excellent. They all kind of, they put the focus into that last mile. There's in like shipping and delivery, it's called the final mile or the final delivery or something like that. And they talk about the logistics of getting the package from point A to point B. And then there's this last mile from driving it from the place to their house, and how if you focus on that, you can really drive a business in that industry. And I feel like that's it's a good metaphor to pull over into our industry, to say that like it's that final mile. If you can just get it all laid out and everything like that, but you're there with the customer at the end of it, and you're making sure that they're satisfied, that they're getting out of it what they want. I think it was Mick from A&B Security that he says you got to ask them, like, is this what you wanted? And I feel like that's hard for some guys, because you just spend all that time, they just spend all that money, you're just kind of like hoping, oh yeah, this is what they wanted, but to take it that extra mile, and is this what you wanted? So yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. But
Yeah, because sometimes I think a big piece of that is sometimes customers don't know the details of these systems. They know they want a card reader and keyless entry, right? They
yeah,
like the mobile app. They like mobile credentials, but sometimes you just have to tweak stuff, right? They go, well, I thought it worked like this. If it's a quick tweak and an easy non-charge billable change order, you do it, right? Go the extra mile. Stay late on the Friday. We got that project done. The guy was leaving yesterday for vacation for 2 weeks. For him to know his retail business that he's been building for 10 months is now operable in exactly the way he wants it, even with his last minute changes, all it matters. I don't care if we ate 8 hours a time in half my office day. It is what it is. Good business comes back around. So.
yeah, awesome. Well, that's all the questions I got, man. So you killed it, and I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast. I have mad respect for you. It's always been honoring to associate with you and to see your company grow over the years. And I just think you're doing an awesome thing. So I really
I
appreciate the time,
appreciate that.
Brian.
Thank you. I appreciate
But
being on here. And like I said, you're doing the industry a bigger favor than I think more people know. And this Bid2Bank, I think you knocked it out of the park on this. You listen to it. It's what the same struggles I have or what other companies have with same or different solutions. Fantastic platform.
yeah, great to hear, man. Well, I appreciate you, and we'll have to have you back on for something else. You know what I'm saying? So it'll
Sounds
be
good.
good. But thanks for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Baer.